Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. With your hosts, Lonnie Lowery.
Remember, Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree held together with scar tissue and bone spurs.
Rob Fortney.
And I'm telling you, the pain that I would suffer was beyond excruciating.
And Phil Stevens.
Do it, Rob. You'll kill all those nerves.
Thanks for listening.
Welcome, Iron Radio listeners. This is Lonnie Lowery. I'm an exercise physiologist, and I'm a nutritionist, and I'm a former competitive bodybuilder.
And this is Phil Stevens. I run Strength Field. I'm a competitive powerlifter, dabble in Highland Games and any other sport that's walking around that's usually heavy or fast and short. So,
Nice. This is Dr. Mike T. Nelson. I'm an instructor at Rocky Mountain University, faculty member at the Carrick Institute, owner of the Flex Diet certification, and I'm actually at home today.
hey.
Amazing.
Yeah, right? Wow. It's, You know, honestly, I can't tell when you're home or not because you take that sweet mic with you when you travel. You know?
Yeah.
Mobile studio, you know.
Yeah, it works out pretty good.
It does.
Yeah, sets off the TSA people all the time, but other than that.
Oh, right. Like, is he going to do some kind of weird government, anti-establishment podcast from Russia?
Yeah, they don't know what it is, that and fat grips. So I have to take both those out of my bag all the time.
Yeah, you left explain
My belt.
it.
I brought my belt on our last flight, and they got checked both times. So I had to open the bag.
Yeah, that sort of emphasizes, we're always saying how niche we are. I mean, Iron Radio listeners, I think we know, are a niche of a niche, right? Lifters are not exactly one of the big 2 or 3 sports in this country, like football, basketball, maybe baseball, And then on top of that, we're even within that lifting niche in several ways. Yeah, and the equipment you guys have, you're left explaining to people who have no idea what a powerlifting belt is or what it would look like or whatever. Okay.
It's a little bit big to wear for your dress pants.
Yep. Okay, everyone. Today we have 2 males and 1 study that actually came out in the New York Times. And then after the break, we're going to talk about whole body workouts. We're going to revisit the topic because it's timely. I've had a couple of people ask about what we do in the gym. And those of you who are listening, you know who you are. You are one of multiple people who said, can I get a peek at your guys' training logs? Or can you say exactly what you do? Well, we're not going to bore people with gory details, but we'll talk about, some of the way we've been gravitating, I think, over the years. Maybe once you're experienced after a while, whole body workouts may be an answer for a lot of people. So anyway, let's read this first one. Phil, this is a friend of yours. This is Forrest. He made a nice donation, so thank you, Forrest.
You dropped me
Yeah. He says, so I thanked him, and he said, you're welcome. He said, as I mentioned to Phil, I played some older episodes while welding up a monolift in the garage. Nice.
Yeah, he sent me some pictures. It looks nice.
The familiar voices and topics were almost like having a few buddies over, chatting away in the background while I worked. It was perfect. I really appreciate what you guys do. The constant flow of real information with little fluff keeps me motivated for the gym. So that was nice. Yep. So you're welcome.
Canadian as well, from up north. So.
Sweet. Yep. I think that's one of the best things a podcast do, frankly. You can put them on in the background if you want. Driving, boring treadmill work, stuff like welding or, repetitive or whatever you're doing. Over the years, I've really been stricken by the number of people who say, like, there's not, and this may not be the case with Forrest, but there's not a real, community in my area, and this keeps me connected to sort of a secondary type, lifting community. So,
yeah.
The second one, let's see. Oh, this is Jeff Wilson, who won our Big Eats contest. He just got a hold of us, and he basically, I said, so what do you want, coffee mug or something? I only have a small handful of these things that I, leftover prints and stuff like that, and he's a like-minded dude because he says I have a collection of over 100 coffee mugs, so I'd like to add an Iron Radio mug. But then he said, I feel a bit bad winning by default, he felt like, because the listeners page doesn't have quite the activity it used to have, and he hoped more people would contribute. The truth is, behind the scenes, from bandwidth perspectives, we have more listeners than we've ever had. In fact, I've been meaning to send Phil and Mike both some of the data, and you can really see it in the number of mails we get and all that sort of thing. It does make you wonder why Facebook. I mean, Facebook sort of took a hit lately. You know, I don't know. Maybe people are less inclined to do everything through the central hub of Facebook. I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah, but by other sources that we can actually see, we have our fingers on the pulse of this a little bit. And so IronRadio is bigger. It's actually in 2017, it was bigger than it had ever been before. So I'm not too worried about it. At the same time, yeah, when we do social media type stuff, and admittedly, we don't do a lot of that kind of marketing stuff, but it'd be nice to see, more participation. So good on you, Jeff, for participating, and that breakfast was redonkulous. So we'll get you a sweet mug. All right, news.
Strength and muscle sport news.
This is from Gretchen Reynolds, actually in the New York Times. It's actually based on a paper in MedSci Sports Exercise, a journal that Mike and I are very familiar with. It's sort of a, prevailing, what I would consider mid-tier journal. It's a solid journal. Anyway, here's the write-up. Can coffee rev up your workout? It may depend on your genes. Now, a lot of this stuff isn't necessarily news, but there's some new information in here, so bear with me. It says, according to a new study on the genetics of caffeine metabolism, athletes with a particular variant of a particular gene show basically increased improvements in their endurance performance. Now, this is by Guest and colleagues. I think the senior author on this in this lab is L. Sohemi. Anyway, that's from the actual study. It basically says people respond differently to caffeine. Some become jittery and have difficulty sleeping. Others, it doesn't bother them. The same range of reactions occurs in athletes. So let's see here. A few years ago, some of the disparities in the way people responded to caffeine drew the attention of Ahmed El Sohemi. There it is, a professor of nutritional science at the University of Toronto. So we have sort of a Canadian-themed episode here. Mm-hmm. That gene, called the CYP1A2, CYP1A2, controls the expression of an enzyme that affects the breakdown and the clearance of caffeine from the body. By most estimates, about half of us are fast caffeine metabolizers. And if you're interested, that's probably what you want to be, right, from a couple of different perspectives. So 50% of us fast caffeine metabolizers. Another variant of the gene slows caffeine metabolism. People with one copy of this version and one copy of the faster metabolizing type are considered moderate metabolizers. Okay. About 40% of us are thought to be moderate metabolizers. Again, in how quickly we clear caffeine from our system. That leaves about 10%, by just doing some math here, of us that are slow metabolizers. And those of you who are familiar with some of this literature, those are the people who might have increased heart disease risk and things like that, or cardiac risk, like heart attacks, because caffeine can narrow blood vessels, things like that. So what they did in this study was the scientists, they swabbed men's cheeks, right, to get just sort of cells, easily obtainable cells, look at their genetic makeup, which variants that each man carried. And again, these are endurance athletes. But again, it does speak to other performance issues, because, God, I can tell you, in the very brief, non-fatiguing power stuff that I do in my lab, you could clearly see this, different response from people. But they had the athletes do 3 separate 10-kilometer time trials, basically on a bike. Once they gave them 2 milligrams per kg of caffeine, and for the record, that's pretty low. That's pretty low.
It's definitely on the low end.
Yeah. On another trial, they gave them twice as much, so 4 milligrams per kg. Now, that's about in the usual, ergogenic range, performance-boosting range. And then in the third trial, they gave them a placebo. Overall, when you actually go look at the paper from Guest and colleagues, there was a 3% improvement. Again, but that's across all these metabolizer types, right? And Mike, you and I have had this conversation many times, but what does published research do? It takes an average of a group of, 10, 20, 30 people, sometimes more, but then you don't see the genetic variance, the weirdos on either end of the spectrum, or you just lump them all together, you melt everybody together, and so if you do that, it looks like a 3% improvement, which honestly that looks like it would be barely statistically significant. So anyway, so it does say on aggregate the men performed better with caffeine, and again it was only about 3%. Fast metabolizers rode nearly 7% faster after they downed the larger dose of caffeine. Again, what I would consider realistic dose of 4 mg per kg. The moderate metabolizers sort of flatlined between doses and trials, didn't really do much. The slow metabolizers, now I found this bizarre, but the slow metabolizers showed the greatest impact with a negative 14% effect. So they've slowed down 14%. It says just how this happened is unclear. It might have had to do with the narrowing of blood vessels. Again, they're trying to look at the same mechanisms that they did with the heart attack risk. Now, I have never, well, I can't say never, that's a strong word, but I have rarely seen someone perform worse, on ballistic kinds of tasks, regardless, right, of their genetic makeup and that kind of thing. Not that I'm directly looking at their genetic makeup, but they said it might have to do with the narrowing of blood vessels. In fast metabolizers, the drug likely provided a quick gush of energy that was quickly cleared from their bodies. So let me go to the conclusion in the real study, because I think this matters. Not that I distrust this Gretchen Reynolds. She may be awesome, but, science journalist, I'm always bitching about them. This is MedSci Sports Exercise, March 2018. I mean, now. Now. Guest and colleagues. The title is Caffeine, CYP1A2 Genotype, and Endurance Performance in Athletes. The conclusion down at the bottom. Our findings show that both 2 and 4 milligram of caffeine per kg improves 10-kilometer cycling time, but only in those with the AA genotype. In other words, they've got the fast combination of genes here. Caffeine had no effect on those with the AC genotype. So again, a fast, slow gene mix. And diminished performance at 4 milligrams per kg in those with the CC genotype. Again, slow. And then finally, CYP1A2 genotype should be considered when deciding whether an athlete should use caffeine to enhance endurance performance. So interesting stuff, I think, coming out of some Gen Pop media. And one of the labs that first started noticing, right, that there are different genetic responders. That's pretty much it. Mike, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, the lead author there is actually the lead author on the upcoming revised position stand on caffeine. So I'll drop her a note in maybe a couple months. We can get her on here to talk more in detail about it. But yeah, it's super interesting because like the study showed the newer things are looking at taking genetics and saying, okay, you're fast, you're slow, maybe you're somewhere in the middle, and then seeing if there's a difference in performance there. My guess, and this is just purely speculation on the people that were super slow, is I wonder if even that low dose was maybe too much, right? So if you take someone, as you know, who's a fast metabolizer and you just give them a crap ton of caffeine, at some point their performance is going to get a little bit worse. So I wonder if maybe they've already kind of passed the ergogenic dose, but again, that's just speculation on my part.
That's not a bad point. We actually presented a paper, I think it might have been in Japan. One of my students, Alex, actually, she looked at the performance curve and then like the psychometric, how wired you felt. And it was funny how they uncoupled. At some point you start kind of overdosing, and your bench press bar speed flatlines. It doesn't keep improving, and yet your alertness and focus keep going up. So at some point you feel like you're incredibly awesome and you're moving the bar that much more powerfully, and no, you're not, right? We're looking at the readout in real time on the machine, being like, this guy's he's so wired, and he thinks he's so much better than he was at the at a different level And no, he's not. So it's beautiful for the people who sell pre-workout pills, right, or powders.
Oh, yeah.
Because people, they feel like they're Superman, and up to a point, yeah, it works. I mean, that's really not even up for debate in my mind anymore, whether it's brief explosive strength or endurance. Caffeine works as an ergogenic aid. But yeah, the more is better thing that people love to keep using the extra pre-workout for even more. I can get a little bit more. No, you can't. No, probably not. So,
yeah. And we see that with everything, right? There's different shaped curves of response, whether it's an inverted U or, at some point you're going to see a different response. And yeah, not to diverge too much, but there's some interesting stuff, even looking at toxicology of super small amounts of doses of some things being very toxic, moderate being not too bad, and then high doses being toxic again. So like a complete U-shaped curve. So it's
weird.
It's not always a nice, neat, linear response to everything.
Right on. Yeah, pharmacokinetics, they're a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty much it. Any other news from around the industry? No.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I passed my CISSN exam. I finally sat down and took it when I was in Costa Rica, so I passed that, so I was happy.
Well, that's some humility on your behalf, because you could write that thing,
Well, I actually helped with the review course for it. And I was like, I told the guy, I said, well, I can take this ahead of time. I don't want to be one of those people that's like, oh, here's your review, but I haven't taken it yet. It's like, just take it with everyone else. So
yeah.
But it was good to have a deadline and all that kind of stuff.
Right
so,
on. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's go to break. When we come back, we're going to have a freewheeling discussion about whole body workouts, who they might be best for, who they might not be best for, pros and cons, how we do it, the whole shebang. We'll be back. Hey listeners, this is Dr. Lonnie Lowry. If you've ever had anyone critique you on your protein intake as part of your weightlifting lifestyle, oh, you poor meathead, all that extra protein is going to rot your kidneys or weaken your bones or dehydrate you or give you gout or who knows what. There is a book available. You could simply Google CRC Press and Lowry. And what I've done is reach out to experts all over the world and create a book, a single compendium that you can hold up and say, this is why I consume extra protein. This can be very valuable when you're being quote-unquote educated by various professionals on the topic. There's an enormous amount of literature in this book on the safety, the effectiveness, how protein works in cells, the history of protein and weight trainers, much more. So again, please check out CRC Press and Protein and Lowry. You can just Google that, and I do, full disclosure, I do make a small single-digit royalty on the book, but that's not why I did it. I did it so we can all have something, our particular population, to both defend what we do and to inform our nutrition and our eating. Thanks. Iron Radio is, of course, primarily a podcast. But over the years, there have been technical glitches calling for backup streaming and listeners who wanted the convenience of other sources of audio content. Toward this end, Iron Radio is now simulcast and backed up on YouTube. If needed, please search Lawnman07 or Iron Radio from within YouTube. There's not much video, but if you like to listen through YouTube on a Roku or other living room device, there you go.
Like your weekly fix of Iron Radio? In addition to being a popular institute on iTunes, we are also on email. Simply go to www.ironradio.org and sign up for the voluntary email. You'll get a once per week email, no more. That's little more than the show notes and a link to the audio. So go for it.
Hi, we're back. And this is Phil Stevens. We're going to talk about kind of what we're doing now is what the question was. So this kind of fed into a question we had the other day that I posted up a couple weeks ago while me and Lonnie were on the air. if anybody had questions for us on Iron Radio. And Matt Hall wrote in and said, a plan for training 1 day a week. And oddly enough, that's kind of what I'm doing right now. So, and I started this, we're about almost a year ago. So close to a year ago. Probably more like 9 or 10 months. But I'm getting 90% of the time I'm getting all my training in on 1 day, which is Saturday. So, and what led me to that, my usual was like 4 days a week, where I'd have like a bench day, a press day, or another bench day, deadlift and squat. But I was just getting too beat up, and with all the various repairs I've had, it kind of just led me to this day where basically I was having a lot of mediocre days instead of any good days, because I was always in some kind of pain from the training. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I'm going to try I'd read up on some of the, I think it was in Marty Gallagher's book, Purposeful Primitive, years ago. And there was a couple guys in there that were veterans, and they got like all their training done on 1 day. So I was like, hey man, it's worth a shot. And I've been at this for a while. So basically I go in, I get my squat done, and then I'll bench a little bit on some days. Lately I haven't really been benching much. And then I go to my deadlift and then throw some rows in and things like that. So basically, if you're going to do this, I think it's a couple things. I don't know if it would work for somebody new. I don't think the training stimulus is enough. I don't think there's probably enough total volume, and you got that learning curve. Basically, I've been at this, I've been competing for 15 years. So, and I've been at this longer than that. But it's one of those deals where it takes less to kind of hang on to what you had than it does to get it. So, and I'm still making progress, but it's also giving me more time to recover. So I'm able to hit a bit heavier lifts. So basically what I'm doing is mainly doubles and singles, and lots of them. So it's fairly heavy, 80% plus almost all the time. And then I have a week to recover from that. So that's kind of where I base it out. And I run it kind of like a meet. It also has me very comfortable when I go into a meet. But usually I get all of this done in 2 to 2.5 hours. So when I come to a meet and I have a heavy squat, and then like 6 hours later I have a heavy deadlift, I feel great compared to, usually what takes me the longest is my squat, because it takes me forever to warm up. It's that first lift, just getting going. So like I'll do a heavy squat, and then it may only be 15 minutes later I'm pulling a heavy deadlift. So after that heavy squat. So when I have hours of rest, I feel pretty good. But that's kind of what I've led to now is that I got to keep it pretty heavy. I got to keep the volume kind of okay. So many sets, there might be 8 to 10 sets in there that are pretty heavy of each lift. But then move from there. And I think it's working because of the years I have. I have the muscle mass. I have the neural adaptation and things like that. So Matt, if I think, go ahead.
I just say even the mindset, right? That you can wait a week between and not decide to stop lifting or get distracted or I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, if I'm in the gym, I'm just so busy, and that's what I hear this from other gym owners too. The hardest thing to get in when you own a facility is your own training.
Yeah,
like everybody else gets theirs in. So, and by the time it's my turn, it's like, oh god, it's time to shut the doors and get out of here. So I'll try and get little things in here and there. Like I'll pick up somebody's bar that they're deadlifting with, and I'll do some bent over rows and things like that. But it's not a lot, and I'm fairly active. I'll chop wood here and things like that. But my training plan, I think it's working mainly because just I'm more advanced. I think if you were someone who was doing it, I've worked with people that I have 1 to 2 days a week, and they're more of a beginner. I think you'd need to really load up on the volume, and instead of taking a powerlifter's mindset that we have, which I'm always still just looking to kill things and make it easy. I don't want to grind through sets.
Yeah.
I'm always looking to make mine easy. You would have to go like Lonnie always says, tissue assassin.
Yeah.
If you're going to do 1 to 2 days a week, and literally just like you can't hardly walk the next day, and give yourself that week to recover.
Yep.
If you're a beginner, I think that's the route you would have to go, is just massive sets of 10s and 20s and things like that, to the point that the next 3 days is like not fun to walk upstairs. And then you have a few days after that, and then okay, I'm back at it again. So I think you could pull it off. It depends on where you're at and what your goals are. So
right, yeah, career stage. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, What about you, Miguel? You were mentioning before we hit the record button about how you were doing some things lately.
Yeah, so kind of similar to what I was doing before. I was in Costa Rica, so I did a bunch of different weird kind of screwball stuff there. I think one of the other guys there, Luke from Muscle Nerds, was trying to kill me. So I think his little goal is to see how sore he could make me the next day. But outside of that normal kind of distress training, which was still pretty fun. Since I've been home, kind of back to a similar template. So I did a upper body day 2 days ago, and then just because of schedule, ended up doing more of a lower body day yesterday, but I just alternated with squats and chin-ups or pull-ups. I found that's actually been working pretty good. So my squat's been going up. And yesterday was just, everything felt kind of slow. I was actually using the push band to measure velocity, and it wasn't super fast. So I just said, just going to leave the weight a little bit lighter and just do 3 or 4 reps and try to keep the speed somewhat faster. But I haven't done that particular movement probably now for 3 weeks because I've been gone. And then during the week, the other day is just more hypertrophy kind of upper body type stuff. I've been doing more cardio. And then I did play around with throwing in an upper body-ish day because I realized I haven't done a lot of vertical pressing because in the winter it's hard to use I do a lot of that with an axle bar. So I get a little nervous in my garage if I have to ditch that somewhere. It's not going to end well. So in the summer, I usually just take it out into the street with bumpers, and that's much easier. So I just added something I haven't done in a long time is just military press for super high reps, so 15 to 20, and then just started working the weight up from there and kind of let the reps drop down, and then just alternated that with old school standing bicep curls.
Right on.
Did that, and just did some overhead cable stuff, just press downs and some more rows, and that was it. I was in and out in less than 40 minutes, and so I thought that was good. And it's crazy to me how when you go into a higher rep range, and my overhead press isn't super strong by any means, but holy crap, do I feel like a pussy because I haven't done probably over 5 reps in that in forever. So you can get in a fair amount of work doing that and not have to beat the crap out of yourself, and it doesn't take very long either. So
right, yeah. Part of the reason for this, like I said, timely from several angles, but this past week I actually, I was in the mood. I had some coffee. I was ready to go. Maybe I'm a fast metabolizer. I don't know, but I did a whole body workout, and I think it might have been Monday night, and Monday nights are it's crowded at my gym, right? And it's actually hard. Back in the day, if I was going to do a squat workout that was going to last an hour or more, I would kind of wait in line or fight for the squat rack, that kind of thing. Now it's just not that worth it for me because I just want to get in, do my 3 or 4 sets, and get out, right? So I actually thought rather than go kind of wait in line in the back room at the gym, we have sort of a powerlifting back room, and that's where the squat racks are and the power racks and stuff. I just lifted at home, and I deadlifted, and then I squatted, and then I benched, and then I finished up with some direct arm work. I just really feel like I have to do direct arm work, but maybe that's the bodybuilder background. But I just did 4 sets of each of these things. Focus on the negative, like Phil said, tissue assassin a little bit. I use 2 1/4. That's not going to impress anybody. I don't care. That's not what I'm about. And I was wrecked for days. I mean, sore all over, And so it made me think about some of the pros and cons of this. I mean, if you're a busy professional person, or like Phil with barely getting a chance to get, into the equipment, on the equipment himself, or like me at the university or whatever. I mean, literally. I'm going to go in again today. That's going to be twice this week, grand total, But I would think that those kinds of workouts, you could do them twice, 3 times a week. And here's the interesting thing from a volume perspective. Instead of drifting into the bodybuilder-esque split, body part split like I used to, where I might actually only hit back once a week, I end up stimulating back twice or 3 times this week, right? Even though I'm going to the gym infrequently, so I might get 12 to 16 total sets for my back. And again, for me, a 2 1/4, that's a nice medium weight. That's not a medium weight for a lot of you guys that listen probably, but it is for me. So, 4 sets of 8, whatever it might be, bench, squat, and deadlift. I love it. I actually feel like I make physique progress more quickly when I do it that way. And if you think about the volume per session doesn't look very impressive, right? Because you got to, in your mind, you have to keep a little bit of juice for the next big movement. So I was only doing 4 sets. But again, over the course of a week, I might end up doing 12 to 16 sets instead of maybe a total of 8 sets for any given muscle group, right? Because I think more from muscle group body part split instead of, performance movements. So the efficiency of the 2 to 3 day a week thing, I just love it, man. I need to get back into that. I made a lot of progress doing that last year for about 6 months, and I think I'm going to do that as we ramp into summer here, right? Because, it's deceptively higher volume if you are a low rep, low number of sets kind of lifter. Now, it did take me about 90 minutes to get through that, and that's longer than I would normally spend, but I don't know. I just thought that was great. Let's talk about exercise choices, though. Again, because some people were asking, like, what do you guys do in the gym? Can I get a picture of your training log? That kind of thing. Phil, I know you're like you said, you're all over the place and whatnot, and sort of hodgepodge. But like, are you just going squat, bench, dead, or accessory stuff?
Yeah, majority of it. The majority of it's just big lifts.
Yeah.
So, there's certain things that I just can't do anymore. I'll go do them every now and again. Like chin-ups, they light up my shoulder. I've got a bad shoulder. So I'm at that point where it's like, yeah, okay, chin-ups are awesome. They're one of those things you should do, but I can't. So I'm not going to do them anymore.
Right, yeah.
And every once in a while, I'll just go knock out, and I can still knock out like 15, 16 in a row, even though I don't do them. Basically all my moves are around bringing my competition lifts up. I got to meet in 4 weeks. So it's mainly that. And honestly, if you've already built it, like I said, if you're just squatting, pulling, deadlifting, benching, and things like that, you're going to hit it all. So, that's basically what I do. It's just the big lifts. It gets me in and out. I enjoy it. I know if I go in and, like today, I got to go in and squat 655. If I do a few reps at 655, there's not a lot I didn't hit, Yeah. So, and I was out at Mark Bell's a week and a half ago, and we did 3 sets of 5 at 605 on deadlift, and then a bunch of stiff-legged deadlifts, and called it a day. That's enough. So I think a part of that's load too. Once you're up to a certain load, and that's one thing I've changed with my clients. Percentages are percentages. Like 80% is 80% until you get really strong. I can't ask Brian, who's squatting 900, to do, 670 for 30 reps.
Right. Yeah.
So we can get more out of less, like we talked about before the show. And like me and Windler talk about this a lot. Now, if I'm doing assistance work, usually it's a lot lighter than it used to be. I might do good mornings with I have good mornings 650, but I'll do it with like 225 now.
Yeah.
And just kind of go through the motion. Usually a lot slower, just looking to hit the right movements. I don't need to pack on the weight on that stuff to keep building. So, right. But basically, it's all based around really big compound moves. I don't have any time to waste. So
I think part of it is you're not trying to break new ground in the good morning. You're just got to maintain those systems and those structures, while you focus on the bigger lifts.
Yep. And that's what I'm trying to get up is my squat, my bench, and deadlift, get those back up. And right now, will this plan change? Probably. But I'm going to ride this very few days a week as long as it can go up. I'm squatting potentially more than I ever have. My deadlift's going back up. I haven't been benching because my shoulder hurts. So, and I figured out that I start benching and my bench goes down. I quit benching, and I joke and I tell everybody I do all my benching in my head. It's all mental reps. So I just hit my first bench session in like 8 weeks, and I literally just worked up to 315 just to make sure I could still hit it easy. And it was there. I was like, okay, I'm done. Yeah. So as long as I can do that, honestly, it's better than hurting. And I'm going to try and figure out something after this meet and try and figure out a plan as far as my benching that doesn't hurt. Because, I mean, if I can go in and bench, I barely missed 405 at the last meet without training my bench. I trained it probably 6 times in 6 months and hit like 375 and barely missed 405. So if I can figure out a way to train it some and keep the pain in the shoulder away, then I think I can get in the 4s again. But
wow,
it's just figuring that out. You know, it's ever changing. So
yeah, I think you're right. You can't have intensity and volume at the same time, right? And when the intensity can go up outside of any kind of norms, you know, like textbook norms, something like 80%. That sounds pretty reasonably heavy, until you're a 1,000-pound squatter. Yeah, and then that's 8 bills on
exactly.
the bar.
You're not going to do that. Like, I'm not going to ask JP to do 8 or 5 sets of 3 at 800.
Right.
He's going to look at me like you're stupid.
Now, Phil, people are gonna pester and say, "Well, Phil's not giving very specific numbers. What's the total number of repetitions you might do in each of the big lifts?"
Okay, like today, I'll go in there and I'll hit. Well, it depends on early. So if the lightweights, I might stay there longer. So I stay at lightweight until I feel right. So some days that's not very long. Some days it's a long time.
Yeah.
I will get all my. I won't go over 315 unless it feels really good. So I'll stay down under that in the 135, 225, 315 range, and that's where all my warm up gets done. Once I'm past that, then it's really fast, and I'll go up. 315, 405, 495. Like today, I got to go to 655. So, and then once I get heavy in the 550, 545 range. Now, my goal is usually, now I start hitting my doubles and singles. And what I'm looking to do is get like anywhere from 4 to 10 sets in that heavy range of 80 to 90%. So I'm most days I'm not going in there for a specific number. I'm just looking for that number of sets of hard work in that rep range. And if it's only 605 for that day because I did 7 sets before it, that's okay. I'm just looking for hard work in that heavy range. Today I have a very specific goal because I'm 4 weeks out from a meet. So I will work up pretty quickly and get to that 655, which is going to be my opener, and I'm going to hit that and kill it. And I might do it 1 to 3 sets, depending on how it feels.
Okay.
So, but most of the time I'm looking for that 6 to 10 sets of hard work in that higher rep range. And honestly, I have an idea of what the load's going to be on the day when I go in there, but it's not concrete. It's like I said, it's more about just getting, I know if I'm in that 80 to 90% range, it's hard work and I'm going to get better. I'm not going to get weaker by squatting 600 pounds.
Right.
Even though my goal is 750. I need to be able to get in there and go kill sets in that range, and that's heavy enough. It's going to get me where I want to go.
Phil, this reminds me of Muhammad Ali. They used to say, how many, sit-ups do you do? And he says, I don't start counting until it starts hurting, Yeah. And so it's like, it wouldn't make sense for you to count how many reps you're doing. Yeah, you might have to do 5 sets with 135 or 2 1/4 on some days, just because you're like, I shake off the rust, and I'm not even counting yet because they're not work sets.
And once it feels right, if I can make 225 feel right, then literally it would be 1 rep at 315, 1 rep at 405, 1 rep at 495. And it's literally just feeling it then. Those don't even count. I'm just going up.
Got it.
And if 1 rep feels great, then I rack it and I go up. There's no point in waiting. So I'm looking to get in that range. My reps count once they're at about 80%. So.
Yep.
So.
Well, I can, listeners, from a bodybuilding perspective, my movement choices, they're usually compound movements, except for some of the direct arm work. Because like I said, I'm just one of those guys. I like standing barbell curls and, lying triceps extensions, right? Skull crushers, hit heads, whatever you want to call them. I like that kind of stuff. But usually those are at the end. I almost do that like when I do some V-sits or incline sit-ups or, it's almost like finishing stuff. It's fun to get a pump at the end, right? But at the same time, I'm usually rotating what I consider some of the more basic compound lifts, maybe not to a power lifter, but so it could be like, Mike, you alluded to like freestanding military presses. I love them. I think that's such a basic core kind of thing. So maybe one day of the week, let's say I do it twice in a week. Like this past week, I might have done. I literally did deadlift, squat, bench, and then some, just standing arm work and triceps work and whatnot. But I might just as well swap in military freestanding overhead pressing instead of the bench pressing. I'll swap in barbell rows or seated cable rows instead of deadlifts. That might sound blasphemous to some power lifters, but man, those are serious movements, and they make my lats and my traps really sore. And I know it's not a perfect indicator of how well you stimulated a muscle group, soreness, but I still use it as a gauge. I mean, obviously, I've created some micro trauma. I'm going to get some muscle remodeling. For legs, squat, I'll even do leg press or hack squats if somebody's on the, they're in the power rack where I like to squat or something like that. Honestly, you can load up a leg press. I made some of the best gains in leg mass I ever have when I lived in San Diego. I would leg press a lot, like higher volume leg pressing. It's great for growth. I mean, I don't think you can beat the squat. I honestly, I know people always argue what's the king of exercises. I would probably vote squat. I understand that there's some arguments to be made for the deadlift too. Those got to be the two contenders. Unless you're really good at bench pressing, then you might think it's the bench. But yeah, I mean, leg press, hacks, and squats for legs, freestanding military presses or overhead, like barbell or dumbbell. Like I said, all kinds of rows. I mean, I don't know how often. This sounds funny, but because I don't see a lot of the power lifters at my gym doing this, but just bent rows, barbell bent rows. That is a serious man movement. And not to take anything away from the females who listen to us, call it woman movement then. But either way, you got to man up or woman up, to start doing some heavy barbell rows. It's pretty taxing stuff, and in a way that's different. It's just different feeling to me than what a deadlift might do to my back, kind of thing. And by the way, dumbbells, I have no problem swapping in dumbbells for bench pressing too. Like Phil, I've got the old guy's shoulders, and they're only going to like so many different things, and I can grab much heavier dumbbells because I can supinate and stretch at the bottom and all that, get mind in the muscle kind of thing, than I can with a barbell, which just grinds the shit out of my shoulders. It seems like no matter what I do, I remember Phil saying if you grab really wide, because I was doing that sort of just to kind of feel it, but then that's so much emphasis on my shoulders, so then I would take it a little more narrow, but I just have a hell of a time with barbell bench pressing as far as, hurting. Like I said, because I'm using like 2.25 these days. I mean, if I go over 275, and I'll do that occasionally in any one of these lifts, but, I have to be... It's a lot, like you said, Phil, like what you feel. And if my joints aren't allowing it, I'm not going to be stupid and like tear something in my shoulder, and then that'll set me back entirely. So.
Yeah, and that's one place I'm at now, and it's great because I know, like the last time I benched before this week was like 6 weeks ago, and I literally I brought 315 down, and I just told the guys take it. When I pressed it up a little bit, I held it and took it because I knew, okay, that doesn't feel right. I'm gonna break something, and it didn't feel heavy. But I knew it wasn't worth it.
Just wrong.
And I know that now.
Yes. Yep.
And there's days I can go in and kill it. And for me, it's more of as long as my shoulder's healthy, I can hit it. And one of my clients put it best the other day, as far as my training right now. He's like, well, if you want to be able to bench like 370 or 405 without training it, you better have benched 450 once before. And that's the truth. The reason I can still do it is because I've benched much higher earlier in life. So I'm hanging on to 80%, without having to do much. So
I think that's a truism in all of lifting. From so many, I can think of so many examples where to break new ground you need some heroic effort, right? Yeah. But to maintain something or even inch forward moderately, once a lot of those systems are in place, it just doesn't take the recklessness anymore.
Yeah. No, I mean, with very little work, I don't see me like for a long time. I can't say I'll be able to do it when I'm 75. But it'll be a while before I just can't bench 315 just because I can.
Yeah.
Just because I've lifted so much heavier by prior. But I mean, I think it's a lot of pass, and a lot of what changed my training too was my hip replacement, and like the doctor telling me that it's not load that's going to mess it up. You have so much volume you can put on that hip. It's the amount of load over time.
The wear and tear.
Yeah. So I mean, he's like, you can go squat 800. Don't do it for 5,000 reps.
Right.
So And so I keep the volume low, and I don't have like my hypertrophy's lower than it has been in a long time, but the muscle I have is as stronger than it's ever been in my squat. So
it is interesting how it can decouple, because the average Joe just thinks muscle mass and strength are directly related, and that's true up to a point, of course.
Yes.
But yeah, then you watch them uncouple. Like you said, the strongest powerlifters are usually not the best physique type, hypertrophied state while they're performing.
I mean, you're neurally adapted. You know how to, and also, I mean, you can't get past the, like, their form is impeccable. They've been doing it so long, they know exactly how to squat. Like, I can tell you when I hit a squat, right after it's done, I know exactly what went wrong. Oh, I was a tiny bit out in front, or whatever. I just know from the way it feels. I need to fix that, and I gauge every rep that way.
Yeah, so volume becomes almost an art, and I know that doesn't help a lot of listeners. I mean, numbers out of me before we ask Mike is, I would say this past week, I think I did 4 sets of 6 to 8 reps in each one of those movements, and I was wrecked. I don't know. I was happy to be so, right? Because now I'm going to go back in today. I actually feel refreshed. I've been out of the gym for several days. I'm starting to get that kind of itch, to get back in there. But make no mistake, for a good 3-4 day period, I was just sort of growing and recovering in my mind. I mean, protein synthesis curves, whatever, but yeah, I felt good. And yeah, geez, maybe a total of, I don't know, what's that, 4 times 6, 24 reps, for each muscle group. I don't know. So, Mike, thoughts from you about volume or any of the above?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a big fan of volume and frequency, and even if, like you guys were saying, you can't get to the gym that often, keeping the volume of work as high as you can, but also, like Phil was saying, making sure that quality stays high. And I know probably one of the biggest mistakes I've made in the past, especially on lifts that I'm weaker, like squats, is in my brain, I'm like, oh, but I feel so much weaker on this. I have to work up to closer to a max each time. And when I went back and looked at my logs, I'm like, oh, that was horrible, because you could tell on even lighter loads that it wasn't going to be there. So in essence, I was not practicing what I would say is good form, at least for my body. And then this past year, I was finally able to get my hips kind of sorted out, so I can actually squat now without any pain. And for the first time in my life, it actually felt good, and I actually looked forward to doing more barbell squats,
nice.
Which I can't ever say that's ever happened before. And then I finally said, okay, I'm going to stop being an idiot and throw my ego back under the bus and just say, okay, what can I do for 5 reps that's pretty easy? So take an 8 to 9 rep max and just do it for 5 reps. Can I hit 5 reps that just feel really good speed? And then can I just keep adding, another set or 2 each week? So I just did 155 for 5, and then I ran that for probably like almost 3 months. So my goal was to get up to do 5 reps with that for at least 8 to 10 sets with the same speed, same everything else. And then once I hit that, then I would, do that and then just, add a little bit more weight, maybe do, 175, did 195. And then even with travel and everything, I did a test before I left for Mexico, and I hit 215 pretty easily. I stopped there because I just didn't want to injure myself before I went kiteboarding or have something weirdly go wrong. But even though I wasn't really practicing much heavier than a few singles at 175, it translated pretty good. So I think part of it is realizing that if you can accomplish lower weights and volume and keep the quality high and just keep adding sets. I mean, obviously there's definitely a component to strength and learning. But since my lift is so low in that area compared to my other ones, I probably don't need to go, singles and doubles and that kind of stuff per se. I can take something easier, do that each week, and then just keep adding more to that. And then that's worked pretty well. And then I also said, okay, since my squat is so much weaker than my deadlift, I actually, for probably the first time in my life, didn't deadlift for like 2 months, which was, I think, the first time ever. But even in Costa Rica, we just, we're deadlifting and just worked up to a max and I hit 375 or somewhere around there. It was in kilos, pretty easily, and even though I haven't had any direct practice on it, I'm not that far off from where I was either. So I think as long as you're kind of training something that's similar, like Phil was saying, if you've got a fair amount of experience in other lifts, your lift isn't going to just all of a sudden tumble to zero. It's going to be there even without a lot of direct practice too.
Well, I think it's worth saying. What I'm doing, my people aren't doing.
Yeah, and you have a lot more experience than probably most of the people you're training too.
And I agree with you. I mean, we mainly do a lot of volume. I'm one of the powerlifting coaches in the world. I mean, we spend, if we're got a 12-week training cycle, 8 of those are going to be under 80%.
Yeah.
80% or under. And we're doing a lot of volume. And they're looking to kill light weights. So.
Yeah. From what I've seen in the lab, it's fun to look at this from different perspectives, but because I still like to do negatives quite a bit, it's somewhere between 25 and 40 total repetitions. If you're doing like 4 count negatives, that you're going to rock people. Like, you can do blood draws and see enzyme efflux. You can see a lot of damage markers, a lot of soreness. 25 to 40 reps with a medium weight and negatives. That's how I've always gravitated toward the volume side of things, if you will. But yeah, I'm just so tickled lately. And again, I guess it depends, right, on what your goals are and your career stage and that kind of thing. But I guess I hope we've at least provided some info on, total dose when it comes to reps, the art that comes into play sometimes. If you are that more experienced, intermediate, or advanced guy or gal, you might not count reps on those first couple of sets while you're working up and getting into your work sets, stuff like that. But I thought it was, again, timely topic. It was fun for me this past week because I walked around sore and I just felt like I really accomplished something, and then now I'm gonna go do it again. So I'm looking forward to the next, I don't know, at least 3 months of just continuing to do this stuff. And like I said, I've really noticed that I can make really good progress this way. I like what Mike said about adding a set instead of just more reps. If you are going to do this whole body kind of workout, sometimes I just think heading into each set a little fresher, there's some advantages to that too. So
yeah. Well, the last comment is I think it all depends on what your goals are too. I'm purposely trying only to lift, 2 days per week since the rest of it is more still aerobic based development through probably spring. And then I also realized the older I get, not that I'm that old, I'm 43, I just don't want the risk of being really sore or have any like niggly type injuries. If I'm going to spend money to we were in Tejas and then we were in Mexico, maybe 10 or 20 pounds to lift for that potential, I may, sprain something or twist something to do the other thing that I really want to do. So I think a lot of it is being realistic with what are your goals, kind of what are your priorities, and then where is that, risk reward. If people are really pushing, powerlifting or other things, then yeah, they're probably going to take a little bit more risk. If that's not your number one goal in life, probably not worth, pushing it just for that little bit more of a % increase.
Right. Yeah.
I say even then, though, I think most people go too heavy too often, even as powerlifters.
Yeah.
You don't need to go to 100% to get strong. I've said it 100 times, but if going to 100% all the time made us strong, then we'd just do meets every weekend and we'd all be jacked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
be singles every day in the gym.
Yes. So.
I'll leave everybody with one thing. The potential drawback to this is I like theme days sometimes, thematic. Like if I was a power lifter, I'd probably love having just squat day, or like sometimes I like to go in and I always like chest and arms day, like t-shirt muscles. This is fun. It's kind of silly. But when you do whole body stuff, it's less thematic. It's less topical on the day that you go in. So it's a kind of thing I don't know if I could do forever, but I do. Like right now, I'm motivated to do it, right? Because the hypertrophy that I end up with is worth it. So I don't know. I would suggest at least give it a 12 or 16 week run, and see where it gets, to see how it fits into your goals and your lifestyle. So, okay, good stuff. I guess we'll see you next time.
See everybody next week.
See ya.
Hey listeners,
Have you seen the store at IronRadio.org? There are 3 halls in the store. One for Phil, one for Fortress, and one for myself, Dr. Lowry. And they're thematic. So you can go into our Halls of Iron store and choose based on your goal. If you need something to learn or read or something nutritional, you can look in my store, Lonnie's store. If you want something about injury prevention or competition, then take a look at Phil's Hall of Iron. And if you want something about motivation or daily training, Fortress's Hall has what you're looking for. There are some fun, heroic descriptors as you browse through the store, so we try to make it a little more fun than the average boring online store. And whether you're a novice lifter or someone more experienced, you can take heart that you're not wasting your time. The things that we put in each Hall of Iron are actually based on our own recommendations. Protein powders that we know to be good, knee sleeves, wraps of some kind, things that Fortress uses in his own training. The stuff you see, you know is good. This way you don't waste time. So check out the Iron Radio store at ironradio.org and let us know what you think on the forums, and certainly you can request products and we will screen them before they go in. So thanks for listening. Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.